an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
So good evening to everyone who is listening to us from Sydney and around the world for another episode of Ultimate Global Podcast. And today, it's a very special topic, and I'm sure that a lot of millennials, a lot of youngsters, a lot of people who are on LinkedIn would want to know how to make the best use of LinkedIn and how to build your personal brand. We keep on hearing this a lot. This is a very popular term around the globe these days, but very less people actually know about this term. And I think Deepak only shared a few days back that only 5% or 10% of people actually post content regularly on LinkedIn, which is very, very less, and that this is a good opportunity for you to stand out from others, and also market yourselves in a way that you are projected in the right way, because at the end of the day, I think I've also said in one of our previous sessions with another expert that it's all about selling yourself to the employers and how you market yourself, because you are also a product. So today we have Dipak Vadera, who is the Director of Inbound Sales at Leadfeeder London. Leadfeeder is a website visitor analytics software that shows you the companies visiting your website and how they got there, what pages they clicked. Very interesting software when I went through their website. So kudos to Deepak, and I also looked at your journey, how you have been progressing in this organization over the last 3 or 4 years. So thank you so much for coming to this episode, Deepak.
Thank you very much, Saurabh, for having me on your show. It's my pleasure.
So to kickstart with, I would definitely start with this question only as to how can one build their personal brand on LinkedIn according to you?
Well, I guess the first step is deciding what do you want to be known for. So I think there's 3 components when it comes to getting started and getting going with a personal brand. So in first place, you have your personal profile. So what is it that you want to be known for? And then building your personal profile with that in mind. The next step is creating content. So curating and creating content that your audience will enjoy reading. So if you know who you're selling to and who's going to find relevant what you have to say, you'd ultimately know what they're interested in hearing, and then start creating content on the back of that. I can't stress that consistency really is key. So it's imperative that you build a content pipeline that you can then resort to in cases where you're not feeling inspirational or you have too much on your plate. You can't really dedicate time to create content from scratch. So on first hand, like I said, we had your personal profile, then building that content. And then lastly, growing your network, connecting with the right people. Those could be people that you ultimately sell to, partners, individuals who complement the solution that you're offering, or people who can perhaps open up those doors for you and introduce you to the right people as well. Growing your network and networking with people, putting yourself out there essentially.
So you touched based upon 2 important points. One point was growing your content pipeline and also expanding your network. How do you see people doing that in their day-to-day lives? Because, this is a very common thing that I keep on hearing from people. I also learned doing it just a few years back. Before that, I was not at all active on LinkedIn. But some of the people also come back to me and, they have this question that how should we find time along with our studies or our work life to be regular on LinkedIn?
I think it's simply setting time aside for LinkedIn. So just blocking off time on your calendar to actually do it, just because if you don't manage your calendar, it'll end up owning you at some point. So making sure you have time aside, maybe have a 30-minute block every day to go through LinkedIn and do those 3 things. So your profile, you can get it done. Your profile, you can get it done, on one occasion, and then can spend those 30 minutes connecting with people, with new people, adding at least 1 or 2 new people to your network every single day, and actually having a conversation with them, not just connecting with them and leaving it there, but actually starting a conversation with them. Then spend time curating and creating content. So working, maybe spending 15 minutes from that half an hour, just creating new content. You're probably not going to be posting every single day as you're getting started. So you can spend 15 minutes today and 15 minutes tomorrow to create some content, and then spend the remaining 10 minutes engaging and interacting with other people on your newsfeed. So people that you're connected to, engaging and interacting with their content. And then, yes, just putting yourself out there with your interactions, with your engagement.
Yeah, I think this is a great point that you have raised, that keeping slots in your calendar to do the same. And, that's what I also learned from you a few months back when you interacted with me. And I also started creating this content pipeline. Previously, I used to interact on LinkedIn in the last year as well, but it was generally one post a week. But now that frequency got increased. I'm still trying to be more punctual, as punctual as you, who comes up with 1 or 2 posts, not a week, but every day. And that's something which also I would love to know from you. How do you come up with so much of variety? Because when I read your posts, it's not only one kind of post or similar kind of post, it's a lot of variety. You have LinkedIn polls, you have posts on sales, and now recently you have started posting your own videos in those beautiful forests. So how are you coming up with all those content?
So I repurpose a lot of my content. So a lot of the content that you see that has already been pushed out there is content that I've published in the past, but I'm now producing it in a different format. So I'm repurposing it in a different format. But the underlying message is the same. So that's one of my tricks. The other one is simply putting myself out there in terms of reading content. So I do read a lot of content. I follow, individuals that I look up to, or people who are on the same boat as me. And the more content I read, the more content I consume, the better I get as a writer when it comes to producing that content as well. At the same time, I also chat with our clients, understand the challenges that they're going through. What are some trends in the industry, for example? I chat to our customer support team. What sort of conversations are they having? What sort of interactions are they having? What sort of objections do they encounter on a day-to-day basis? Because they get fired left, right, and center with objections, and they know what sort of challenges people are going through, what issues our clients have or our prospects have. So these are great sources of kind of inspiration for me. So again, it's just setting out that time aside to gather that data, gather that knowledge, those insights, just so I have a lot to then work on when it comes to producing that content. So looking out for ideas for that content curation, and then I can set time aside for that creation out of those 15 minutes that I proposed on a given day. And the more inspiration you have, the more sources you have, the more variety you have as well. So in my case, I target 2 personas. I target salespeople and marketers, which means that I have a lot more content that I can leverage on that will be of interest to both departments. And so that's why you see a lot more variety from my point of view, because I'm targeting 2 personas.
Yeah, that's really great, Deepak. And I think that's what I really like about your LinkedIn profile, is that you have a lot of content, but it's not at all boring. Sometimes you might just come up with a content which is of similar type. I would not like to engage with that quite regularly, but your content has got that variety, which really makes it interesting to read, and something which people can definitely look at. But people who are listening to us might also want to know, why is it necessary for them to create a personal brand on LinkedIn? Because there are so many other ways of networking. There are so many other ways of getting connected to future employers. How do you see the importance of LinkedIn getting more and more every year?
I think having a personal brand will help you stand out amongst the crowd. Let's take the CRM space as an example. It's a very saturated market, and I'm feeling the tiredness of all morning, man.
All good, all good. Take a break. No worries. I can always delete it.
Cool. So let's take the CRM space as an example. It's a very saturated market. On one hand, it presents an opportunity whereby no one has actually created a CRM platform that ticks all the boxes just because there's so many players out there. But on the other hand, it's created a problem of having too much choice. There's so many CRM tools out there. Which one should we choose? And I guess using this same example from an individual point of view, like there's so many people applying for one given role. For example, a role at Leadfeeder, we get 90 plus applicants for one of our roles on a weekly basis. And we go through all of them individually, but the ones that really stand out often have built a personal brand. They've done something different, and they showcase this through their personal brand, standing up for something or doing something that's a little bit out of the ordinary, or just being a bit more creative in their approach. So a personal brand will essentially help you get to that point where you can, when you have a lot more at hand or you're known for something, and that allows you to then open up some doors. In terms of going and thinking and kind of setting up that personal brand, think about things that you want to be known for as an individual, or what sets you apart as an individual as well. What's something unique about yourself that you can capitalize on and use that and be known for that? So for example, in my case, I became location independent. I kickstarted my life as a digital nomad back in 2017. And I've been using that, or when I did, initially start making those work on my personal brand in the early days, I started using that, the fact that I was traveling around, going to new countries, meeting new people, getting outside of my comfort zone to engage in activities that I wasn't used to, or just being adventurous in all of the things that I was taking part in. I was using that and tying that to the role that I was working in as well. So finding a link between traveling and backpacking and sales, and I leverage that to stand out and be unique, and I let that shine through my personal brand. Like, this is what I want to be known for. I want to be known as the sales backpacker, for example.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way of putting forward the things, and how you are targeting just sales and marketing. It shows that you are quite focused towards one specific area. It also shows that you have already decided what you want to do at an early age, which is a good thing. Another thing that would love to know is the different sections that you have on LinkedIn. So there are always, some importance. There is always some importance of those different sections, such as the heading or the summary, or what you are putting in the recommendations, or are you putting anything in the featured section? How do you see the importance of these sections for different kinds of people? So let's take, for example, because you are in sales and marketing, for people who might be listening from sales and marketing domain, how can they differentiate themselves from others?
There's a lot of components to a LinkedIn profile. So let's take the cover photo as an example. So I see that as a billboard. Just because it takes a big chunk of real estate from your profile. When you go into someone's profile, that suddenly captures your attention. So using that billboard, that cover photo, to gather someone's attention, but then also keep them interested. So, having something creative there, or even having your contact details as reference. So as soon as someone goes on your profile, they check out your profile, they go through it, they scroll through it, they like what they read, they feel like you're the right person to help them with their goals and objectives. They know immediately how to contact you because your that call to action or your contact details are listed in your cover photo. That could be one way in which you can make that, you really leverage that billboard for something that's a bit more meaningful, and then at least get people to take an action, or at least have that contact detail as a reminder there. Then we come into the about section, or before that, actually, we come into you have your photo, and then you have your headline. And something I advise salespeople to do is really use that as a headline in the true sense of its words. A lot of people add their job title there, which is fine, but you often end up repeating that in the experience section as well. So why don't you use that headline to highlight something unique about yourself, or a unique selling point of your product or service, just to stand out and gather someone's attention. Because ultimately, again, think of it as a headline. If someone doesn't like the headline, they're less likely to read anything else that comes after. So use that headline in the true sense of its words to stand out. And then after the headline, we get to the experience section. So again, I'd focus here on the why. Why do you get up in the morning to do what you do? What is it that you do, and how do you help the people that your product or services aim towards? I still see a lot of people using the experience section, or the about section, as a place to kind of, as a cover letter of some sort. So there's people on there that go in and write things like, I'm confident, hardworking. And that's great, because everybody wants to work with someone who's hardworking and confident. That's a given. At least that's what everybody expects. So you shouldn't have to really say that. So use that to, shine. Use that to say something unique about yourself, or what drives you, what gets you going, and why do you do what you do.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to know. What do you mean by this thing? Because I think there's definitely a counter question coming, which a lot of people would love to know. And I know this thing that a lot of people write this thing in their profiles, that they are confident and hardworking. What do you mean by not using these phrases and using something else to showcase their personal brand?
So, like I said, people want to work with people who are hardworking or confident. You shouldn't really have to say that. People will assume that you are hardworking or confident. It's obvious, right? No one wants to work with someone who's not. So, leave that to a side and use it instead as a means to showcase something unique about yourself, or differentiate. This is a chance for you to differentiate yourself between, someone who's providing, someone who has relatively the same profile as you do, and what sets you apart from them. Like, why you? Why should someone work with you as an individual? Take the CRM case as an example. So, the CRM providers that offer marginally different solutions, why should someone opt to work with you when that other person can provide me with roughly the same? But why should they choose you as an individual? And that's where that about section comes in. Use it to stand out and shine through something that makes you unique as an individual.
Also, coming back to the LinkedIn post and the content that you create, what would you be recommending to different kinds of people in terms of the content that they should be posting on their profiles? Because again, there is a lot of content coming on a day-to-day basis. Is there any process or structure that they should follow while posting that? Because obviously, if somebody is in recruitment, they would love to post more towards recruitment. If somebody is towards artificial intelligence, they would want to post something related to what's going on with the AI in 2022, or those kind of trends. So any kind of structure that they should follow before thinking of because this might be heard by people who might start after this episode and would want to know a structure. Okay, that's how I will start from next week.
I think the first thing to do is understand your audience, research and understand your audience to know what are they interested in reading, what's going to add value to them as an individual, like what are they after. And then once you figure that out, think about producing content that ticks one of these three boxes. So content that's educational, content that's engaging, and last but not least, content that excites your audience to want to take action. As long as you can tick one of these three boxes, that's a good piece of content. And then when you create that piece of content, keep this in mind. You want to create content that your audience is going to like. So again, that's where that research comes in. You know exactly what your audience is after, what's going to add value to them, what's going to excite them to want to take action. Then you want to create content that allows you to qualify your audience. This is especially true in my case, for example, where I'm targeting two personas who have a very varied set of interests, right? Like sales and marketers, they're usually after very different things, even though they're ultimately working towards that same goal, ideally, in an ideal world. They're usually they have different interests, different things in mind, different things that they're working on. Because I'm targeting multiple personas in sales and marketing, I need to think about creating content that allows me to qualify my audience. So this post that I'm posting today is aimed for salespeople. The post that I'm pushing out in a couple of days' time, that's going to be for marketers, for example. So understanding that if you are targeting different personas. And the last one, try and create the content by yourself. Because if you start relying on external sources, that content will ultimately not sound like you. You want your content to sound as authentic as it can be, and it can only happen that way if it comes from you. Because ultimately, those individuals who are reading that content are in some shape or form going to be dealing with you. So you want to try and let your content do the speaking for you, do the selling for you to a certain extent. Just like when you see my posts, right? The posts that you see of mine, they sound like me. They sound like how I'm speaking at the moment, and I'm using the same verbiage that I'm using at the moment as well. So just keep it authentic when you do push something out there. You don't need to aim for having buzzwords or write long paragraphs. People want something that's easy to digest, easy to take in, and ultimately, if it's educational, engaging, or excites them, that's what they want to read. Just think about, why do people come to social in the first place? They come to take things somewhat easier, right? That's the whole point of having a social network. People come to learn things, but they also go on there to take things easier, and they want to be inspired. They want to feel better, see something that's going to help them, make them smile or make them laugh as well. So just keep those things in mind. It doesn't have to be just purely educational.
Yeah, I think these are really good points when you talk about being authentic and being transparent, and because that's when people will start trusting you and what you are posting. Otherwise, definitely you will keep on posting, but nobody or very less people would love to engage with your post. Related to the post only, would love to ask you that people who will start their personal branding or who might be doing their personal branding right now would have this question that there are some factors on which the content would depend. For example, are you using any hashtags? Are you tagging people? Are you generating some discussion on your comment section? What time are you posting your content? Is that the right time for your target audience? How would you rate these factors into consideration when you are posting your LinkedIn posts?
A lot to take in there. So I'll start off with the time to post. This really depends on your audience and ultimately when are they going to be on social. And you can only get to this conclusion if you start posting. And over time, you'll know, hey, my audience seems to be more active on a Monday at 3 p.m. because I'm targeting so-and-so in this geographical region, for example. But you can only get to that conclusion if you start posting, because your audience will not be the same as mine. And it is true that there's a lot of statistics out there on best times to post, but they don't take into consideration your audience, the people that you are targeting and going after. So the only way you can get to that conclusion is if you start posting yourself. You mentioned hashtags as well. So hashtags, again, will really depend on your topics, the topics you're posting about, your industries. I would say, again, test hashtags that are not too generic. So you want to try and move away from those. So things like, hashtag sales. They have a high search volume, yes. They have a high follower count as well. But your content is ultimately going to get lost or fall through the cracks if you just use those generic hashtags, because there's so many people using them at the same time. So try and look for something that's got relatively good visibility, but hasn't really been exploited yet. I did this with a couple of hashtags, such as hashtag prospecting. It wasn't that well known a couple of years ago, at least when I started posting. And to this day, when I sort top-rated posts under hashtag prospecting, it still shows up some of my older posts. So it can work to your advantage if you choose the right hashtags and you think about ahead, like you think about the future, because you never know when a certain hashtag is going to become trending or it's going to be used by a lot more people. So when it comes to tagging people, I would say just be very cautious who you tag and why you tag them. You don't want to tag them for the sake of it because you're just after their attention. You want to tag them if there's actually going to be something in there for them. So if you tag someone, let them know why you've tagged them. So tag them, let's say I tag you, I'll let you know why I've tagged you. I'll write why. So it's not just a random tag there. So that way, you know exactly what is it that you're going to be getting out of that post as well. I'm not just after your attention or your engagement on that post. So just be very mindful of that. When it comes to commenting on your posts and interacting with other individuals, if someone takes time to comment on your post, the least thing you can do the least you can do is reciprocate, as in go back to them and give them a thumbs up to that comment, or reply back to their comment if they're asking for something. It's the least you can do to acknowledge their participation in that comment, or in your post, I mean. And something that I do often is I try and spread out my engagement on my posts. So if people start interacting with my post, I'll obviously get back to them, but after a certain amount of time, I'll try and space it out. So I'll try and respond to comments a little bit later, just because if I do it that way, my post will show up in other people's news feeds as something, there's action happening in that post now, even though the post was published a couple of hours ago. So I like to spread out my responses to comments after the first hour or so.
Yeah, absolutely great. I think these are the insights which really we look for in this episode for anyone who would be listening to us. Another thing which definitely we want to discuss here is how can people build quality relationships with people around the globe. One thing which we see is that we start connecting with a lot of people we don't know, but we don't even add any personalized note. Importance of adding a personalized note to a new connection who might be relevant to you, who might not have any first direct connection or second hand connection or third hand connection. That's fine, but still you want to connect with that individual. How important it is to send the personalized note, and also what other tips would you like to give to build that quality relationship from people around the globe?
I think giving a people a reason to connect, because if you just send a blank connection request, for the most part, a lot of people will accept that connection request. But because there's been no interaction, no one has taken that first step, the chances of that connection request leading to something meaningful is very low. So what I like to do is, before I send a connection request, I'll take a look at that person's profile. What are they working on? What is something that they've interacted with recently? What is something that they've posted recently? And maybe take that or use that as a means to start that conversation. So at least I'm taking that first step. I'm starting the conversation. And then they have something to at least get back to. What I notice is a lot of salespeople will start their conversation with a pitch. And it just gives the impression that you deserve someone's time. But no one deserves anyone's time. Time is a finite resource. You need to show someone that time is a finite resource. So you need to earn someone's time if it's something that you're after. So what I like to remind my sales team is, give, and then ask for something. But you need to lead with that intention to give first, because you're after their time. It's not the other way around. So you need to show them that you earn their time. And it's not something you deserve, that you don't have that sense of entitlement to it. So that's why I say, do some research, look that person up, and then give them a good reason to connect. Yeah, so for example, absolutely. If I notice you're working on this podcast, I might send you a resource on it. This is what you can do. This is someone who you could potentially invite to your podcast, or this is what I recommend you adding to your podcast, for example. And then that way, at least start with some advice or a suggestion, or something in common that I noticed that you're interested in, or the fact that, for example, you, like myself, we both left our home countries to go somewhere else to study and pursue a degree in academia abroad. So that's something that we have in common, and might be something that I would have used to start a conversation with you, for instance.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I know this session is more about personal brand, but definitely, since we are talking about LinkedIn, a lot of people who are working in companies are using it for B2C and B2B marketing as well. How do you see LinkedIn as a platform for those people? How can they make the best use of it for their B2B and B2C roles for LinkedIn? Because LinkedIn is really driving a lot of sales these days if you use it properly. The only thing is how to use it properly, and do you have the right skills and the right tools to use it properly, isn't it?
Right. It's good to have a strategy in place on how to best use a platform, because just doing things at random won't yield consistent or tangible results. So I think definitely you need to think about the strategy first, or implement the strategy, and then work on that, and make sure everyone's pretty much on the same wavelength, like pretty much everyone in the team, the whole company is behind that same idea. In terms of using LinkedIn for B2C, that's out of my expertise. I haven't worked in B2C. I don't know what it's like using LinkedIn for B2C, so it's something that I can't really speak about. But using it from a B2B standpoint, it is a very powerful network. You mentioned at the beginning, only a certain percent of LinkedIn users are actually posting content on a regular basis. That's actually less than 1%. So less than 1% of LinkedIn users are showing up on a weekly basis posting content out there, which makes LinkedIn an absolute gold mine for someone who's using it to put themselves out there. It serves as a great opportunity for anyone to shine if they do it right, if they play their cards right.
Yep. I think these are really great suggestions, Deepak, that we have discussed during this session. Before we end today's episode, do you have any top 2 or 3 tips for people to take away with for building their personal brand on LinkedIn out of so many things that we have discussed?
I'd say be authentic. Only write about things that you know, care, and are passionate about. You'll never see me writing about, at least not in the near future, about coding, for example, because I just don't know that. It's not something that I'm working on, I have any knowledge or experience in. So I only stick to what I know from my experience and things that I'm interested in. So stick to what you know, stick to your strengths. Don't try and be someone you're not. Ultimately, you will get caught out sooner or later. And once your image is tarnished, like once someone has picked you out as a fluke, or they know that you're not someone who knows what they're genuinely talking about, it's very hard to come back from that. So yeah, just stick to what you know. Another piece of advice is, and again, I can't stress it enough, be consistent. So as you get going, it's not about pushing out so many posts in one go. It's about spreading them out. So if you haven't posted before, start slow. It's okay to start with 1 post per week and then building up to 2 posts per week. I would say the sweet spot is every other day. So because the half-life of a LinkedIn post is 24 hours. So a LinkedIn post can ultimately survive for at least 48 hours, 2 days. So you don't need to worry about posting every single day. You can give yourself that day in between to produce or refine your content or plan the content for the day after. And then the other one I'd say is just have fun, enjoy yourself, and enjoy the journey, because it is a journey. It's not a destination that you're going to arrive to. Building a personal brand means maintaining that over the course of time. It's something that's going to constantly be evolving and changing as times change, and adapting with different scenarios, different trends, different patterns in the industry. So just, enjoy the journey as well as you get started and get going.
Thank you so much, Deepak. I think these are the suggestions that a lot of people will be interested to know, as I said before as well. And you have touched base upon all the critical segments of LinkedIn, including what to include in your profile, what kind of posts people can come out with, and how they can get connected with people. And those critical suggestions that you gave to be authentic, be regular with your content. I'm sure that if a lot of people start using it, it's going to be a tough competition for people like you on LinkedIn, but it's going to be a good way of getting connected to more people in the coming times through LinkedIn, if they use it properly for their businesses as well as for building their personal brand. And I think LinkedIn is nowadays also being used for networking. A lot of people are posting their events, online events, offline events on LinkedIn, sending us invites. We didn't touch base upon sending in mails, which is also being used a lot by companies. Before we end, do you want to touch base upon the in-mail segment? Because I just thought of touch basing upon that as well.
Sure thing. But before I go into that, I just want to iterate that the space for everyone to succeed, just because everybody brings something unique to the table. So that's nothing to worry about. Everybody has something that makes them stand out in a different manner. And so there's space for everyone to succeed and win on LinkedIn. So I don't think that's a problem that anyone needs to worry about. It's not going to get to a point where it's hard to stand out because, like I said, everybody brings something unique to the table.
Yeah.
When it comes to in-mails, traditionally people have been kind of shying away from even looking at their in-mail inbox just because they see it as a straight up pitch. If done well, if done right, you can, stand a chance of getting good replies on in-mails, but you have to, move away from that pitch and use it again in a creative way. So, making sure you have a good subject line, for example, that's going to captivate someone's attention and reel them in essentially. And then using that body as well, not to pitch, but to really open up a conversation realistically, just because people are very scared and very cautious of receiving an in-mail. They just see it as a upfront pitch that they're going to be getting and is most likely going to be deleted. Like the statistics for in-mail opens and in-mails reads are quite low just because of that. People have been used to receiving so many pitches that they're just dissuaded from even opening up their in-mail inbox.
Yep. Thank you so much for answering on the in-mails part as well. And I'm quite sure a lot of people might want to come back to you for a detailed session. I'm sure Dipak would love to give you a detailed session and book you for a detailed session. So if you want to, have your profile judged or corrected by Dipak, feel free to get connected with him and also subscribe to his channel. He only shared a few days back. There is a new bell icon at the top right of your LinkedIn profile, which helps you to get notified like the YouTube channel with the bell icon. So if you want to get subscribed to his channel and also the channel of Ultimate Global Podcast to listen to more such stories from around the world, you can subscribe to both the channels and get connected to him. Thank you so much, Dipak. I really appreciate you spending your time today during your day.
It's my pleasure, Saurabh. Thank you very much for having me on your show. And look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great day ahead.
You too. Bye.
This is an Ultimate Global Podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.